So we'll touch on virtualization. So virtualization is kind of the leading thing right now. People have been using it mostly for green IT as well as server consolidation, but we're going to look at it from a COOP perspective. So before virtualization, you typically had one operating system tied to one physical server, and so it's very hard to do. It eats up a lot of power. The virtualization way of thinking is basically utilizing CPU and hardware that has gone up tremendously in processing power, harnessing those powers and basically utilizing one server or multiple server farms to host more than one OS images. So you're really breaking your hardware dependence on your operating system in architecture. So again, the main thing here is through virtualization, you're breaking your hardware independence, run a virtual machine on any server without modifications. You can have a Dell environment on one side, an HP environment on the other. As long as they run virtualization, it's just like software where you can run, you can open up a Microsoft Office document on one laptop versus another. And also system portability, because your operating systems are just simple files, you're just moving your entire operating system as a virtual image from one location to another through replication. Can you give me a second? So in a virtualized COOP environment, you basically have your primary site, all your images, or all your operating system images and data are stored on your storage area networks instead of traditional hard drives. And from your storage area networks, they're basically replicated to your secondary site over your existing IT infrastructure. We're also going to talk about WAN acceleration. So WAN acceleration is another technology that allows for efficient and modernizing your COOP environment. Traditionally, when you're doing replication from your primary site to your secondary site, you're really limited by the size of your bandwidth. And through technology such as WAN acceleration, you can actually effectively increase the pipe and also reduce your recovery time objectives. So we'll talk a little bit about WAN acceleration. So some of the key things that WAN acceleration does is it'll actually compress and cache your data as well as accelerate it and also give you QoS and different application controls over your traffic going over your WAN. So compression technology is something that is very similar to like WinZip. So you're basically taking all the data in, this WAN accelerator will compress the data going through your WAN, effectively unzip it or decompress it at the remote end, effectively compressing all your traffic. Another methodology that it uses caching, and caching is done in a way where the WAN accelerator at each endpoint, is it has a hard drive. All the data that's going through is cached on one site, and then on the secondary site, if the similar data pattern is seen, it'll basically pull it off locally off the hard drive instead of sending that traffic through the WAN. And again, you can also do traditional QoS on that traffic as well. So what we're going to talk about here is the WAN accelerated SAN replication. So in this picture, you'll see on the left-hand side where you have your traditional servers, all the data are getting stored to a SAN, and from the SAN, the SANs are basically talking to your remote location over your existing WAN connectivity. And then what you're doing is you're basically dropping in WAN accelerators in between. This is an actual report that we pulled from one of our existing customers that have a similar technology implemented. They're using Dell EqualLogic iSCSI SANs, and they're utilizing some Juniper WAN accelerators. In this environment, the customer had a T1 connection, but they also still had to meet the requirements of having their environment up and running within 12 hours. This report shows that within the past 7 days, their peak data compression was 98%, and they were effectively able to replicate or increase their WAN capacity 12 times. The traffic going into the pipe was around 41 gigs, and going out of it was 3.2 gigs. So we essentially saved 38 gigabytes of data going over the WAN. And this is just a animated diagram that shows how this works. So normally your data all gets written down to your primary SAN. Your primary SAN gets replicated to your secondary site through your existing pipes. and the data or your virtual images are sitting at your secondary site. Once the disaster happens, the data that was sitting at your secondary site, the virtual images get promoted and they get powered on. So once the images get powered on, the IPs are reconfigured, the DNS gets changed, and now you have a fully replicated site up and running. The next technology that we're going to talk about is utilizing remote access for telework and also allowing remote access in a COOP environment. So some of the traditional telework has been used, some of the traditional telework programs have been using IPsec VPNs. This is typically a client that you install on your laptop. You have to have the specific client loaded on your laptop or your desktop at home, and then you access your internal resources. The problem with this is, it's fine if you have your laptop with you, but when you're in a disaster, you might not have your laptop with you, or you might not have the software readily available to install. So the solution that we're recommending to our customers is to actually utilize web-based VPN solutions such as SSL VPNs. And we'll talk a little bit about that next. So with secure remote access through SSL VPNs, basically they allow access from anywhere. As long as you have a web connection and a user ID password, it'll allow you to log in. And once you are logged in, it'll basically give you traditional access into your agency environments. So the main focus here is utilizing a web browser that's readily available at any internet site, library, and such. Some of the vendors have also done some interesting things with the remote access solutions. Here, Juniper Networks has actually implemented a license called ICE, or in case of emergency license. This license will actually allow you to dynamically, for a period of 8 weeks, overload or bring up your remote access solution up to max capacity. So in a typical environment where you're not in an emergency, you might only have 10 to 20% of your staff remote accessing in doing telework, but during an emergency, you're going to have to staff up and make sure your devices and your remote access devices can scale all the way up to max capacity. So instead of purchasing a license that maxes out your box, during the entire business time, during non-critical emergency time, this license actually allows you to flip on a switch for a period of 8 weeks, allow you to maximize the license count and then bring it back down. So it's easy to get that check marks next to your COOP plan. The solution summary here, what we're doing is we're recommending people to use virtualization. Some of the major OEM vendors are all pushing virtualization, hardware and the software vendors. It's really the next generation of the operating system. It's also utilizing technologies such as WAN acceleration to optimize your existing bandwidth. And also utilizing your telework program and your telework infrastructure, such as your remote access VPN, to allow access for your all your employees and personnel during emergency times as well as non-emergency times. The solution that we provided here is highly available, it's secure, it's resilient in a scalable architecture, and most of all, that technology is available today. So I think with that, we'll quickly talk about Juniper Networks. I'll hand it over to Robert.
We just want to say thank you to Juniper for participating in today's conference call. Juniper is a leader in switching SSL, VPN, telework, and many of the technologies that we talked about today. Before we turn it over to questions and answers, another thank you to Datacom for participating in the webinar. So, Ref, you want to go ahead and ask
sure.
Please?
Before we go further, I first want to apologize about some of the technical difficulties. This is a new system that we're using, and we've decided to use this system because we want to bring more programs like this in the near future and on a regular basis, and we felt that this program would be the one to use. So we apologize again for any technical difficulties. So I want to go into the questions. I have some questions that came in earlier. First question came in from Victoria Dobard, and her question was addressed towards Carol Robertson. The question is, national essential functions, where are they listed for local government?